Hi everybody, this is Betsy Furler with For All Abilities, and I tried to do this on Facebook Live, but it was super glitchy, so I'm just doing it as a video and then I'll post it in both Facebook and on YouTube. This is the story of how in the world I went from being a speech pathologist to being a software startup founder. So it all started with the iPod Touch. Before that, I liked technology and I wasn't scared of technology, but I wasn't really an early adopter of technology or anything like that. I was either using a flip phone or a BlackBerry at the time that the iPod Touch came out. And when I saw the first commercial for it, I knew that it was going to be a game changer in speech therapy. Because of the touch screen and the gyroscope feature, I just knew it was going to be so valuable. Because up until that point, we were having to get a device that costs thousands and thousands of dollars in order to see if a patient could even activate a touch screen or could identify a picture on command. And this was super important for patients who had had a stroke or a head injury or any other acquired issue, especially because we knew they had language already, but they'd lost their speech. And we didn't really have any good way to test them except for getting a device and trying it out. And like I said, these devices were thousands of dollars. So when the iPod Touch came out, I knew that this was going to be the answer to that problem. So as soon as they came out, I went down to the Target and I bought one and I started using it with my adult patients. I tried to use it with the kids too, because at the time I was working with both geriatric patients and children, but the kids would just kind of like focus down in on it and I would lose them. So I didn't use the iPod Touch with kids, but it was a game changer with adults. Then when the iPad came out, I had a device that I could use with kids. I started using it with my patient, Vincent, and his mom, Kristen Reed, actually started a support group for educators, therapists, and parents who were using iPads with children with special needs. It was originally called Snaps for Kids. It has become Bridging Apps, and it's now a part of Easter Seals of Greater Houston. It connects people with special needs with apps and other technology. So I started using the iPad with Vincent, and then I quickly bought my own and started using it in therapy. Well, fast forward a year or two, and there was a panel at South by Southwest on apps and autism. Somebody dropped off the panel about 3 weeks prior, and they asked me to be on the panel. So I was on this panel at South by Southwest on apps and autism because I was a speech pathologist and I used apps and the iPad in speech therapy. And a man named Jonathan Godfrey wandered into my session. He, at the time, worked for ACT, the App Association. And I happened to mention one of their members and her app. And afterwards, he came up to me and talked to me a bit and said, I'd like to invite you to DC to this meeting that we're having. So I vetted the organization, made sure I wasn't being sold into slavery or anything like that. And I went up, and the first day was a education session on federal tech regulation, which was great because I didn't know anything about tech and I didn't know anything about federal regulation at the time. I was literally Googling like every other word they said. It was a bunch of tech company CEOs and startup founders in the room, and I met them all. They were wonderful. I thought tech people were boring and very rigid prior to that, and then I met this whole room full of wonderful, creative people, and I learned so much about technology and federal regulation that day. And then the next day we went and talked to senators and representatives and other people in the federal government about technology. I was a representative of the people and talked about how technology really does benefit real people out in the world. It's not just all about business. It really has made an amazing impact on our lives. So I've gone back every year with this group of people to help describe to the federal government why technology is really important for our culture and our world. And through all of that, I've met these wonderful people and kind of got bitten by the tech bug. I got more and more excited about technology and more interested in it. And I started doing consulting for tech products for people with disabilities and chronic health conditions, as well as in the education space, the ed tech space. And in the process of that, I also did some consulting on employment disability related issues. I've done education accommodation consulting, especially with technology, for years and years. But then I started getting into the employment arena and realized there was a huge need, and it was really boring because I would go in, see an employee who by that time had had 2 years of failures usually at the job before they called the consultant in, and I could talk to their manager, and easily prescribe accommodations for them that would allow them to work to their strengths. And I was really frustrated. It was really boring. And then I went to the ACT Association meeting last spring of 2019, and we were talking about machine learning, and I thought, hey, I wonder if this is an application for machine learning. So I started thinking about it, and then I researched the field. I talked to HR people, I talked to business owners, I talked to employees who are living and working with ADHD, dyslexia, learning differences, autism, and other forms of neurodiversity. And I ultimately developed my software tool, which is an assessment that helps employers support their employees with these conditions, and really all the rest of us whose brains work differently from each other. And that is how For All Abilities was born, and how I went from being a speech pathologist to being a software startup founder. Talk to you later. Bye.